Today is August 3rd, 2022. My name is Joe Reingold, and I'm interviewing Malcolm Shwarts here in Dallas.
Croatia. And actually, she didn't, because she was the first one born here. She was born in Dallas. And then after she was born in Dallas, she had 3 brothers that were born after her in Dallas. She had like five older brothers and sisters. There was 9 in the family. And they wound up in, actually they were in right sort of Alpha downtown until they moved to South Dallas. And then my dad, I guess he met her, and then they got married. And it took them a few years before they had, I had an older brother, but he died at birth, and then I was born, and then I had 1 sister. So we grew up in South Dallas. We lived on Home Street until I was going to grade school at Colonial when I got shot. I think my dad was worried about the neighborhood, and so right after I got shot, a few years, a couple of years, whatever it was, we moved to East Dallas. And we moved into the Lakewood area. And I wound up going from, I was at Colonial when I got shot. I went to William Lipscomb's grade school, and then J.L. Long Junior High, and then Woodrow Wilson High School. And I graduated Woodrow Wilson High School in 1948, and after that college, I started at SMU, and it was about that time, the summer of 1948, that I was active in BBYO. That I went to a convention in Tyler, Texas, and met Joan. And let's see, I was 18 years old, and I came home and told my mother I just met my future wife. I did.
Yeah?
Yep. And so she was from Minneapolis, and it was not an easy situation. And I had to lie to my dad to get to Minneapolis. I told him, oh yeah, this is very true, she knows. I told him I was going to see a baseball game. I lied to him. I got on a bus and went to Chicago, and I had a cousin there, and I said, if my dad calls, I'm here, but you'll know where I'm at. And I got on the next bus and went to Minneapolis, chasing Joan.
What was she doing in Tyler in the first place?
She had met a girl that I was dating at the time, Blanche Cassidy. And Blanche, Joan had a sister, I had an aunt that she was staying with, was living near where Blanche's sister was living. So Blanche is the one that talked Joan into going to Tyler to the convention, and I was older. I was in the, I was one of the counselors, and so that's where I met her. And I was umpiring a baseball game, and she was playing baseball, and I was trying to hit on her. Yeah, it was a pretty good deal. So anyway, that's how we met on the base in Tyler, Texas. And then it was a long distance kind of carrying on with us until let's see, I started in my 3rd year at SMU. That's when the Korean War was breaking out, and all of us they were drafting us right out of school, as you probably talked to a lot of guys back in 1950, and this was 1950. So I was very one of my close friends, Myron Schwiff, who's now deceased. We discussed what are we going to do? They're going to take us right out of school. And so I told him, I said, well, it was either join the Navy or the Air Force or whatever you want to do. He said, well, the Navy's out because I can't swim. I said, well, you don't have to swim. So I said, okay, let's go join the Air Force, which we did because we didn't want to go in the Army. And I went in the Air Force and then took the basic training, and we had 2 years of college so we could apply for pilot training, which is what I wanted to do. And when we got accepted, I was delayed. It took a while because it was so crowded, and it took almost 2 years. And in that time, I'd gone through a couple of their tech schools, and I was stationed in Austin, Texas, at Bergstrom Field, which was terrific. And when I got called to go into pilot training with Byron, I called Joan, and we had just talked about getting married. And this was 1952, early 52. And she said, well, if you're going to do that, forget me. And so I turned down going to pilot training. But I went into a couple of their tech schools, and I got into their radio and navigation and communications, all kinds of stuff like that. And I thought I'd just stay in Austin. So we got married. But one of my training, I was in single engines, and I was moved into multi-engines. And they called me because they were putting a new bomber group together to go to Korea at that time. And lo and behold, I got called to go into this new division. And the next thing I know, after we got married, and we were married about a month or 2 months, 3 months, whatever it was. Anyway, bang, they pulled me into, we went to Japan, and we were flying over Korea taking pictures for the Army and the Marines. And boy, those guys were shooting at you. But we got lucky because this was 1953, and yeah, it was 1953, and we were only there for about 4, 5, 6 months, and it ended. Right. And then they called us and said it's over, so we're all going back home. So I thought I would go back to Austin, and I would call Joan, and we would go back to Austin. But they were creating I guess the world was, but there was a General LeMay that created this base up in Limestone, Maine. And they put me in these B-36s, and this is a horrible plane, man. It was a huge, you'd go up and you'd be up in the air for 2 days without landing. And at the Limestone, there was no place, so there was a little town way north of Maine, north of Presque Isle, and there was no place I could get Joan. So every week I'd go and ask for a transfer. They started laughing at me, and so finally he told me he could give me a transfer. It could be south. I said, well, there can't be north. There's nothing north of Presque Isle, Maine. That was on the tip of Maine. So it was all the way down to Bangor, Maine. So I called Joan and I said, I got it down to Bangor and I can get you up here. I want to get a place to live. And I had a friend of mine who was a colonel who was leaving, had a beautiful little house in Old Town, which is right outside. And so I called Joan and she came up. My folks drove her up. And so we lived in Bangor for about 7, 8 months until I got married. I took my discharge and we came back to Dallas. Now, that was my early life. So I've survived Japan, Korea, and survived a bullet wound, and now 3 heart attacks, and I'm still here, and I'm whatever it is.
Going strong.
Yeah.
So where did you and Joan live when you were newlyweds?
Well, we lived in Austin. I mean, we lived in Bangor.
Well, yeah, but when you got,
We lived in Bangor until I got discharged. And we came back to Dallas, and I went back to SMU to try to finish my school, but I was married and she got pregnant, we had a baby, and going to school I had to work. She was working part-time at Sanger Harris. We had to make a living, and my dad was laughing at me because what I was taking in SMU was, I was in music and art. And my dad used to say, you know, musicians don't make any money, and artists don't make any money until they die, so you're wasting their time. So he said, why don't you just come in with me? And my dad was in the ladies' ready-to-wear business, and so I came in with him. But I hated it. I just didn't like it at all. And I got out of that, and then a friend of mine, my sister married Joe Freed, who they were in a furniture business. So Joe had asked me if I'd come in with them and help them. They were 3 brothers and a brother-in-law. But it was just so much family. I did that for a while, and then I got a chance. A friend of mine that I met through B'nai B'rith, they had a mattress factory, and he asked me if I'd join them and help them sell mattresses. I said, yeah. So I'll never forget my brother-in-law said, I tell you what, you won't last 6 weeks. We won't even clean out your desk, you'll be back. And every time I'd go out to knock on somebody's door, I'd think about my brother-in-law said, I'll be back in 6 weeks. I said, no. So I created that business pretty good, and then elevated that until I found, well, I went with another mattress company that had recruited me. I was doing a pretty good job, and one of my competitors hired me away from the company. And I went with this other company selling mattresses. And then one of my customers, I had a very good account in Oklahoma City. And I was in there one day, and he told me, he said, Malcolm, he says, you know, he says, I was in Los Angeles, and there is a dinette factory there. And they're terrific, and they're only selling on the West Coast. They don't even have anybody in Texas. You'd be a natural for them. So he gave me the guy's name, and he called them, and he said, I've got a guy for you. Lives in Dallas, but he would be a tremendous rep for you. So they called me, and I met the owner. He sent me a ticket to fly to Los Angeles. They were in California. And I made a deal with them to come with them, but I said, I'm just not going to sell them. He said, well, you can do whatever you want. Just sell our product. You can sell whatever you want. You're independent. And I said, okay. Well, it started growing when I was selling mattresses, and I was selling dinettes, tables and chairs. And then the owner of the mattress company called me, and he said, look, either or, you're not going to do both. And I said, don't make me make a decision, because you won't like what I'm going to tell you. He said, what's that? I said, I'm going with the dining. And so I did. And we did that pretty good. And it grew and grew and grew until the owner died and left it to his son who messed up the business. That was that. And at that time, then another guy called me. He said, I understand you're on the street. And he said, I just bought this factory. I don't know what to do with it. And I was recommended to call you. So I go to him, and we built that one up. And I built that one up until I was 65. And after 65, he called me and he said, it's time for you to retire. And then I got another call from a friend of mine, a competitor in Los Angeles, and I helped him he was in trouble, and we moved into the Bonaventure. We sold our house. Well, I told you, we built a house in Richardson. We lived there for 18, 20 years. And then we sold that and built a house in Northwood. And after Northwood, and that's when I retired, in 95. And she loved the Bonaventure, so we came here and we bought this little place, and we've been here since 95. And then while we were here, I got another call. Another guy was imported from China, and he says, could you help me? I need some help. So I was flying and helping him in North Carolina. And then I had a friend that had a store in Richardson, a dining store, and he asked me to help him. So I was helping him, and I was doing 3 and 4 jobs.
After you retired.
After I retired, it was,
Amazing.
But see, Joe, the thing is, living here was nothing to do. And I was bored stiff, and I was 65 years old. So
why not go back to work?
I was trying to keep busy.
Right. So let me ask you, besides your work and your career, what else were you and Joan involved in anything else, Jewish or civic or anything like that?
Well, one of my loves was BBYO, and I became an advisor. And at that time, my kids were getting up the age of B'nai B'rith, age 14, 15 years old. So they needed somebody in Kaplan. So I go and I interviewed whoever I talked to. And anyway, so I became the advisor for Kaplan. Well, of course, I got in there, and those kids were they rotten. I tell you, they hated me because I came in with a little discipline, and they didn't like that at all. I tell you, the first meeting, opening ceremonies was horrible. Man, I went up to the front of the room we were in. We were at Chef's Community Center. And I went up to the front of that desk, and they were all talking and everything, and I just slammed my fist down. And I said, just a goddamn minute. That's not the way we're going to open up. So anyway, they didn't like me at all, but they all became pretty good guys after that. Yeah. So I did that for like 3 or 4 years, and I loved that. And I had given up because I was playing golf, a lot of golf. And I couldn't do that on the weekends with BBYO. But I gave up the golf to do BBYO when I did that. Now, back in the old days, my parents were members of Shwarts Israel and Temple Emmanuel. So they were deciding whether they were going to be Orthodox or conservative or Reformed. They didn't know what they were making their decisions. So I really grew up at Temple Emmanuel. So I grew up in the Reform system. So I was confirmed in bar mitzvah at Temple Emmanuel. My bar mitzvah was in, let's see, if I was born in 31, so it was 1944, during the war years. Anyway, that's when I was bar mitzvah and then confirmed from Temple. And then my dad remained members of Shwarts Israel and both Shwarts Israel and Temple all those years. So that was mostly my Jewish. And then, of course, Joan was active, my wife was active in women and all the women's organizations. So and growing up in Dallas was easy, I think, because we had good weather. Joan wanted to get away from Minnesota. Anyway, she liked the weather up there. Yeah, that winters was
It's tough.
horrible up there. And that's our life. So we've been we moved into the Bonaventure in 95. So we've been here 27 years.
How has your family grown? Tell us about your kids, grandchildren, etc.
Oh, this is my life. when we got married, and so we had 3 kids. We had 2 boys and a girl. And the 3 of them all went right through school and got their education. 1 SMU and 2 North Texas. And then they got married, and what they've done is they've had kids. So between the 3 kids, they gave us 8 grandkids. And those 8 grandkids now, out of the 8, 7 are married.
Oh, boy.
And 6 of them have already had kids. So we got, actually, my oldest son on his 2nd marriage married a girl. He unfortunately got divorced and married a girl. He had 2 boys, and he married a girl with 2 girls. So he wound up with bringing 2 girls more into our family. So we wound up with our 8 naturals and 2 extras. So we wound up with 10 grandchildren.
Wonderful.
And now those 2 girls are married and they have babies. So I tease all the time and saying that Joan and I, 2 mules, we had racehorse for kids. You know, we were lucky. Yeah, it was pretty good. So now we just celebrated our 70th wedding anniversary. 70.
Yeah.
We married in 52, and 2022 was 70 years.
Wow.
And our daughter, who's the youngest of the 3 kids, she's our baby. She's now 62. She wants to have a party. I said, well, we don't need it now. You know, she said, Dad, 70 years is a milestone. So we're having a little party and to celebrate, but we had to wait because one of our granddaughters was in Europe. We didn't want to have it while she was out of town with her 2 kids. So anyway, we're having a little party, and that's my. So I've had shot, Japan, Korea, and 3 heart attacks.
Okay.
Still walking around.
Still look pretty good. What do you see as the biggest, or one of the biggest, or a few of the changes that Dallas has gone through the years?
Joe, I tell you what, when I go downtown, when I take a ride downtown, I'm like a stranger in my hometown. It's just unbelievable, the changes of the city. The old tallest building that we had then, I mean, it just dwarfed now. I mean, downtown is unbelievable. I can't believe the growth of the city of Dallas, how it's grown. And naturally, you know, and that happens all the time. Somebody's calling me. I don't answer it.
Okay.
If I don't recognize
I
it, I
know,
don't
it's
answer.
probably fake anyway.
I think Dallas is because of the growing of everything moving north, and the city planners, they've tried to move south, but you can't move south. It just doesn't work. And so everything is going north naturally. And I can remember when we first moved to Richardson, that was just way out in the country. And now, you know, look what's happening between Richardson, Plano, Frisco,
And Oklahoma,
Wiley,
all the way up, yeah.
Oh yeah, and pretty soon we'll be at we might annex Oklahoma.
It's true, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, we take Oklahoma in if they need help.
What about the Jewish community?
The what?
The Jewish community in general, how has it changed in all the years you've been here?
Well, Joan and I, we've always been active in Temple, and I was active at first in the Brotherhood, but then I was out of town so much because my job, you know, I lived on American Airlines, so I mean, I was gone My daughter used to say, she says, right there, she thought I was just the guy that came on weekends because I was gone a lot. But my job took me to all 50 states. So I worked my way up to national sales, and you know, I would, when I was with whatever company I was with, I'd take them to the next step to get into a bigger store. And I used to challenge that I could go into a strange city, go to the biggest, best store in town, knock on the door, and try to sell them. Well, I devised a system of how to do it, and it worked. And I used it to get into accounts like such as J.C. Penney or Marshall Fields, Davis, Hudson's in Detroit, and most of those companies are all owned by Target. A lot of people don't know that, but Target's a parent company to a lot of them. And so this is what I just watched it grow. But I think Dallas, because it's so central, and you can get to anywhere in the states within a couple of hours by being from Dallas, and that made it really good, and that centralized on the airport. DFW grew, and I think that through the airlines and being so centrally located, you were 2 hours from anywhere in the United States you wanted to go to, or less. And that's what made it good for me.
Yeah.
So, and the growth, I think, is through that. Of course, I watched that little airline called Southwest Airlines when it first came in. I was flying down to Houston for $10, and they had 2 planes. It was fun, and I watched Dallas grow to what it is today, to a world metropolis is what it is. And if I'd have had some money, been smart enough, I'd have bought a lot of real estate, but I didn't do it. But I think Dallas has just grown way out there. So, and
Throughout your years, is there anybody, whether business or private or personal, that you looked up to as a role model?
one of the guys that's helped me when I was getting started to call was Aaron Klausner.
Oh, I remember.
And Aaron was married to my brother-in-law's sister. And I think he was instrumental when he came into the furniture business, and then I was with him, and he was instrumental in helping me a lot. And Aaron was, I always called him a frustrated rabbi. He loved the Jewish religion. As a matter of fact, he used to do services on the side. He would go into a small town and do a service. So I looked up to Aaron a lot. I used to, and he used to be at his store, and I'd go there, and he helped me a lot in my growth in what I did in when I got into the territories and started selling. Yeah, he was probably one of my big. I looked up to him a lot.
Wonderful. Is there anything else you want to add?
Anything I want to add? No, I tell you, I'm a lucky guy. You know, like I say, I've been shot, a war, and 3 heart attacks. I'm still barely walking around, and I've got a wife from 70 years. So
That's a blessing.
yeah, it's a blessing.
Mazel tov,
And,
mazel tov.
but the thing is now we both, neither one of us drive anymore, and so we don't go to services much. We were up to about 2 years ago. It was about 2-3 years ago. We were still driving to services, and we would go to their movies they would have, and we went to different things. But now it's hard, so we do it on a computer.
All right.
We're just stuck here unless one of our kids calls us and our actually our grandkids are taking us out
That's
too.
right. That's right.
But luckily our daughter and our 2 sons are taking care of us. So we're taking every day for whatever it's worth.
That's wonderful.
What else you need to know?
That's good. I'm good. So, thank you so much, sir. You're wonderful. Your family's wonderful, and keep on trucking.
Thank you, Joe.